So for everybody listening or looking at this, I have the honor of talking to Billy Walker, the master blender from GlenAllachie. Hi, Mr. Walker. Hi, Billy, because we agreed that we can.
Yes, please. Hi, how are you?
Well, we're fine here. Everybody's fine. Hope it's the same thing over there, and hope we'll soon meet each other. But we'll talk about that on the way as we go. This conversation and this interview was generated mainly because we received a couple of days ago a very nice GlenAllachie expression matured in Chinquapin oak, and it's written on the label in Romanian for the selected by Billy Walker for the Romanian whiskey lovers. So this is the reason, the main reason that we're talking today. We don't have that many opportunities of talking to a master blender. First of all, can you tell me what the difference is between a master blender and a master distiller?
Oh, such a complicated question, especially where, in fact, in my case, some of the responsibilities actually cross over.
Okay.
But in reality, the master distiller is a person who takes responsibility for the process of producing whiskey. The master blender will be the person who will dictate what the actual spirit cut will be. He will also determine how long the fermentation should be. And if it's in his power, he would determine the malted barley varietal and the style of yeast that's used in the fermentation. So he overlays the kind of formula he would want the master distiller to exercise in terms of producing the spirit. He will define what the cut should be, and that's actually quite an important definition, because the master blender will be in control of what style of casks he's going to be using for the new fill spirit. And it's really important that if, as in the case of GlenAllachie, where we dedicate a lot of time to very richly flavored wood styles, sherry casks, virgin oaks, and a whole variety, it's really important that the kind of building block of the new fill spirit is muscular enough to carry the kind of rich flavors that are going to come from the cask, and that the cask flavors don't overwhelm the actual new spirit. So that's quite an important definition for the blender, to have a good understanding with the distillery technicians and the distillery, the master distiller, to make sure that all of the building blocks are aligned, and that the quality of the spirit cut is powerful enough and muscular enough to be able to live and keep its own identity in these quite richly flavored casks that we use.
Okay. Yes, that was an important thing to say, because there's a debate here, which is the master distiller, which is the master blender. What we know from the Scotch Whisky Society is that people are awarded the master distiller of the year rather than the master blender. I haven't seen anything about the master blender, so it was a bit of a question that you clarified very well, and it's normal that you did. I don't know if you remember, we talked a while ago, probably 1 year ago, about the cuts, and I've asked you, I wanted to understand how these cuts are made. Can you explain again how you do the first cut and how you do the second cut?
Well, in the old-fashioned way, I mean, the cut, I've talked briefly about what defines the kind of cut you're going to take, but in terms of the foreshots in the spirit, in the old days, when I was much younger and things were much less automated, we would run the distillate and we would test it on a regular basis, the foreshots, by adding water. And by adding water, you kind of encourage the aldehydes to come out of solution, and you get a cloudy effect. And once the cloud has disappeared when you're adding water, then you know you're comfortable and confident that you can start taking the middle cut.
No, okay.
So that's really quite simple. The second one is more complicated, and it kind of alludes to what I was discussing at the start, and that is, what kind of spirit do you want to make? Do you want to make a lighter spirit, medium body spirit, or heavily bodied spirit? And that is defined by how much higher alcohols, isoamyl, N-butyl, isopropanol, N-propanol, that you want to have as a building block going forward into the casks. And again, that is determined by what kind of cask you want to use. There's got to be the right balance between the body of the spirit and the flavors that you're going to insinuate from the cask into the whiskey. In terms of GlenAllachie, we are now fairly full-bodied spirit because of the style of cask and the richness of the flavors in the casks. It's really quite simple. You're making whiskey doesn't need to be a complicated process. As long as you understand the chemistry and the reasons for doing things, then actually it's really quite empirical and simple.
But you know what a lot of people are asking themselves at this moment is, how do you determine technically when you do the second cut? Do you sample the whiskey? Do you the distillate? It's not a whiskey, it's a distillate still. I mean, you drink it. How do you know it's the full body that you need?
Well, at the start of when we acquired the distillery, we would do a number of trials on the stills to determine at what point we were comfortable with the mouth experience and the kind of muscularity of the spirit. We also have the assistance of, we don't want to have too many higher alcohols. We don't want too much isoamyl alcohol in the spirit. So although we don't actually have our own GLCs or HPLCs, we have some local analysts close by who do that kind of preparatory work for us. So it's not kind of thumb in the air stuff. It's very much about mouthfeel, nosing, tasting, and then actually reassuring ourselves, doing maybe a gas liquid chromatograph or an HPLC to determine what the esters content is and what the higher alcohol content is. And of course you want some isoamyl. You can cope with propanols and butyls, and of course you want some isoamyl, but you don't want to overwhelm it with higher alcohols. And it's just striking the right balance, which is a taste thing and a sort of instinct thing from experience.
No, okay, all right. Well, technical details will continue, but I promise you that we will have some kind of party coming over to GlenAllachie, and just to continue this technical stuff. Can you tell me something about GlenAllachie? I've been reading that it was a part of Shiva's brothers and of the Shiva's Scotch blend before you bought it. I mean, not that many single malts from GlenAllachie before you bought it yourself. Can you explain a bit?
Sure, and that's an interesting observation, but it goes much wider than that, actually. And I was having a conversation yesterday with another interviewer, and I was making the point that when I purchased Ben Reek in 2004, there were something like 18 distilleries mothballed.
Okay.
And in truth, the single malt market was dominated in these days by Glenlivet, Glenfiddich, Glenmorangie, and to a lesser extent Macallan. So in reality, most malt distilleries actually were supplying whiskey for blending purposes.
Okay.
GlenAllachie, as part of the Chivas estate, was an important part of their blending process for Chivas Regal, for Clan Campbell, and some of their lesser known blends. So it was an important ingredient. And from my point of view, I actually historically was very familiar with the GlenAllachie spirit, because I had used the GlenAllachie quite often in previous blending processes.
Really?
So it wasn't an unusual experience for me to actually discover. I knew I was familiar with the characteristics of GlenAllachie, but you're right, it had never really been showcased. When we acquired it in 7 years ago, it was the ideal opportunity for us, because it hadn't been exposed to the market. It hadn't been channeled through the kind of high-level Chivas routes to market, which was the kind of opportunity. We want to go through the conventional routes that we understand, that private independent retailers, private independent importer distributors. So it was a great opportunity when we were able to acquire it. So yeah, look, very few releases historically, and that was a big plus for us. And so when we acquired it, we had a blank sheet to decide how we wanted to create the image, personality of the brand.
Yes, in my opinion, I knew that, some parts of it, but in my opinion, until now, and there is no reason why it cannot continue, you succeeded. I mean, you took GlenAllachie out of, like you said, the blank piece of paper, and you've created in this process, quite a piece of art, if I may say so, and I may. But I just one more question, and then please let's talk about this single malt, Billy. For how long has single malt been an important thing in the Scotch industry historically?
I think just retracing our steps to when I acquired Ben Reek, single malt was really controlled by 4 brands. And of course, in the background, there were some independent authors were bringing some very limited releases to the market. In my opinion, it's only in the last 20 years that there has been an awakening in terms of the consumer. Okay. There's been a real awakening, understanding, recognition, and appreciation of the difference between blended whiskey and single malt, and more important, how many interesting single malts can be made available on the market. And a lot of it's changed. The world has become a much smaller place, that geo-economically and geopolitically, we've seen the influence of Asia now is in many ways staggering. The dynamic in Asia, and the appetite, the curiosity to understand single malt, but not really the key big brands, the kind of players that are on the fringes, who actually, in my opinion, bring some very interesting, maybe more interesting aspects of single malt to the consumer. So I would say that the single malt has really accelerated its influence in the market in the last 15 years. And I have to say, continues to grow.
Oh yeah, I should say that too. Some people, and you must know this, of course, some people consider the guys that only drink single malts, because there are people that, well, right now refuse to drink blended malt or whatever, blended Scotch. They just say, well, no, for me, I only drink single malt. So these guys sometimes are considered snobbish. What's your opinion? Is it snobbish not to drink anything else but single malt? Refusing to drink anything else.
I think, frankly, if they are not realizing the opportunity to drink some very, very interesting blended whiskey, they are missing opportunity. There are some wonderful blended whiskies, and if I'm being honest, most blenders would probably take greater comfort from creating a blended whiskey than a single
Yes.
malt, frankly. And that's in the nature of blending. Let me tell you, there is a moment for every style of whiskey. And blended whiskey is not dead. Blended whiskey is an extremely important part of the category and will continue to be. In my early days, I worked with Ballantine's, a wonderful blend. And I still have great memories of the clever work and the creative work we did down there. So my answer is, there's no special moments. If you want to drink single malt, fine, but don't deny yourself the opportunity to sample some of the wonderful blended whiskies.
Yes, I think that's correct in my opinion also. Can you tell me how was in the old days in Scotland? You might probably have heard how it was in the 19th century or before that, before the Victorian era. What did people drink? What do you know? Did they drink blends or did they drink single malt or what did they drink?
I think in these very early days, they probably drank some very illegal alcohol.
Okay, yeah, but that was interesting, wasn't it? I mean, it's the beginning of the Scotch.
It is true. I mean, you raise a very interesting point, and it would be really quite illuminating to actually retrace your steps, because single malt as a player, I think, really only happened after the Second World War.
Yeah, they said 1950, something like that.
Yeah, and really, it was just tiptoeing into the market at that time. Mm-hmm. The people who have driven it, the companies that have driven it, if you doff your hat, it would be unquestionably Glenfiddich would probably be a very important player at the start, followed by Glenlivet, and then probably Glenmorangie, mm-hmm. and latterly Macallan, and one or two other people like Bowmore would have been there, but it was a very limited school that started the process of getting people interested in single malt, and they've been and I have to say that the big companies have been very successful.
Yes. Okay, so thanks for all that, Mr. Walker. Let's get to this amazing dram, the GlenAllachie 2013 cask, single cask strength. What can you tell us about it, besides the obvious things that we were going to talk about?
I mean, importantly, the choice is interesting. You know, the Chinquapin cask is, I have to say, is a big favourite of mine, and it's a style of cask that I have only really become familiar with in the last 4 or 5 years.
Is it new? Is it new oak or is it used? This cask.
It's new oak. It's virgin oak. It's
okay,
virgin oak. It's virgin oak. It's medium toasted and it's medium charred. And
right.
you know, and we will eventually get on to the question: is blending an art or is it a science? And after probably 50 years, I would say that I would vote for it to be an art experience, yes, in the things. But I'm a chemist, so once I have presumed how this is going to evolve, the chemistry will explain why it happened.
Okay.
And in the case of these Chinquapin casks, I only became familiar with these, as I say, 3-4 years ago. It's a very particular style of oak genus. This one came from the Missouri part of the USA. And the characteristics that are unique to this are things like hints of licorice, mint, eucalyptus, not overwhelming. And with these virgin oak casks, we have the benefit of, in terms of understanding the science, and this is the benefit of being both a blender and a chemist, is the kind of molecular structure of the cask is hemicelluloses, celluloses, lignins, tannins, and lipids. And when they're toasted, when the wood is toasted, there's a whole host of thermal reaction is taking place. The celluloses start decomposing into sugars like maltose, fructose, xylose. The lignans and the tannins, you start getting whisky lactones, which will give you the coconut notes.
Yeah.
The tannins give you the kind of spices, the kind of bergamot oils, cinnamons, cardamom. So there's a whole host of chemistry going on, building blocks going on. And the surprise in this one is, in addition to all of that, we have this unique licorice, minty, eucalyptus notes feeding into the whole tasting and organoleptic experience. And I love these casks. I have to say I love Chinquapin casks. Difficult to get, very expensive, and but worth it. The delivery is worth it.
Was it matured from the start, from 2013 in Chinquapin oak, or was it first in bourbon and then Chinquapin?
It was in fresh brewing cask first. We regaged
fresh bourbon, okay.
20. Listen, these casks are so rich.
Okay.
You couldn't have them in from birth through to 12, 30 years. The flavor profile of these casks would overwhelm
the spirit,
the whiskey. We follow these very carefully. Maybe every 2 months we'll make sure that they're going the right direction. And in our mind, we know 3 years is probably right. If we miss that point, then it can continue and something else will evolve and it will come to another sweet point in the future. But you have to make sure that they don't actually overwhelm the balance of the spirit. Yeah.
Yes, you have to feel some spirit inside, not just the oak. I mean, the oak is very important and it gives the characteristics of a certain blender or of a certain distillery. You get that character, but you still have to feel the spirit inside it. That's very, very important. So the balance, I think, is very important. And from what I drank 2 nights ago, it is there. I understand from Cătălin, because I wrote in a post that we owe this definitely this dram to you. That's the first thing. But then we also owe it to Cătălin Rizea from Rivco, the importer of GlenAllachie in Romania, which had the, can I say audacity, even though it's a bit harsh of a word, to try this, because it's not that easy to bring this kind of whiskey in Romania and hope to have success with it.
Can I say the words I would use are brave and courageous?
Yes, that's true. But let me tell you something. I think you have to start thinking of another barrel, because there are not that many bottles left. There is a very good merchant, which is Marius Eremia from Whiskey and More, and he sells a lot of GlenAllachie. So he sold a lot of these whiskeys. If I recall, yesterday there were less than 100 bottles left. So I hope that Cătălin Rizea from Rivco will try to get back to you and have another barrel of GlenAllachie whiskey like this or any other way.
Well, you have to talk to her, and
I will.
We'll talk to her.
Yes, I will talk, definitely. Yes. Okay. Do you feel like going into any tasting notes for this whiskey, or we should let everybody that's watching to discover for themselves? I mean, I agree with a lot that you've said earlier about the Chinquapin oak. I felt licorice, definitely felt licorice, and I felt these spices. I think for myself, I discovered some Middle Eastern kind of fruits like figs or dates, dried figs or dates, and of course some spices, but Middle Eastern spices, not the Far East spices.
You know, tasting is such a psychosomatic experience, and I could actually sit here and tell you what you should be tasting, and you will start searching in your palate to discover.
I know.
These particular. Having said that, you're absolutely right. In terms of the flavour profile, the uniqueness of the Chinquapin brings these licorice notes, hints of eucalyptus, maybe menthol a little bit, some mint. But underlaying all of that are things like toffee and treacle, dates, figs, some orchard fruits, however you want to define these.
Yes.
And these are coming from the alternative chemistry that's happening in relation to how the heat breaks down some of the components, the molecular components in the wood. So it's not this is not a unidimensional flavor. This is a very complex experience.
Absolutely.
And you should take time to tease out all of these notes. And the ones that you're picking, you know, tasting is, if you're a blender, most blenders will do their most complicated work 10 o'clock in the morning. Palate's fresh, the mind is fresh. You haven't fallen out with anyone by that point in the day, so you clear mind. But late in the day, you may have compromised your palate by eating something that's overwhelming. It's put a lot of pressure on your palate. But you have to drink when you want to drink, and there are times in the day where your palate will be extremely sensitive and pick out all the nuances of the flavors. I suspect in the evening it's much more complicated and difficult.
Yes,
and you sit back and enjoy the dram without necessarily overthinking it and overanalyzing it. But many of the things that you're picking up, you're absolutely right. You're going to pick up figs and dates, absolutely. And that's kind of a consequence. You'll also, in the process, pick up toffee, treacle, butterscotch, honey. And that's how you define these things. Some people will say one thing, some will say another. But the truth is, it's a wonderfully complex experience, worth drinking at this strength.
I want to ask you about the strength of this spirit. It's cask strength at 64.4 something, 64.6 or something. I don't.
Yeah.
My hands are too short, so I can't see what's written here. But anyway, I drank it without adding any water to it. So I drank it neat, and I was not compelled to put some water to bring it down. I liked it the way it is. What do you think about this? I mean,
well,
I know if you bottled it, it could be drank at this percentage. But please, why this percentage, and how do you drink it usually?
Well, this is actually quite a broad question.
Yes.
Anything that we bottle at cask strength, we would encourage the consumer to at least try it at cask strength, because we think we will not put anything into bottle that we don't think would be comfortable in your palate and doesn't need a requirement to add water. I'm not saying don't add water, but we think the work we have done on creating the experience, it's comfortable in your palate. You don't need to add water, but if you wish to add water, that's fine.
Yes, okay. Do you, for example, when you test a cask that you want to bottle at cask strength and you find that it's a bit too high in alcohol, do you add anything to it, like water?
No.
So cask strength means exactly as it is.
Yeah, I have to say that we should have eliminated that problem of something that's got an overwhelming spirit experience. We should have eliminated that in terms of our planned wood management.
All right, Mr. Walker, because we are approaching the end. I want you to know that I just got these two expressions today. So this one is the Oloroso, and of course I have the
Awesome.
Amontillado. I did have the the Fino one, but somebody came before our interview and they bought it, so I don't have the bottle anymore. I'm just looking forward to drinking them and to telling everybody what these expressions are. I saw some of your videos and I understand the concept of these drams and these expressions. Before we end our conversation, I want to ask you something that we two have been talking about a couple of times. When do you think we are going to meet in person here in Romania?
For me, it should be sooner rather than later.
Okay, should be.
I have to say, I have been to Bucharest, and on a number of occasions, I've also been to Sibiu.
You have? When?
Yeah.
When have you been?
Well, some years ago, in a different world.
Okay.
But Bucharest is a beautiful city. Sibiu is not such a beautiful city, but a wonderful journey to get there.
Yes, Mr. Walker, thank you for the nice words. Thank you for this interview. We're going to do this, and we're going to meet in Romania. This is a promise to everybody that will be listening and watching this.
And it's my promise to you.
Okay, thank you, sir, very much.